happy Friday the 13th to you. And welcome to the Wrestling Connection. I am your host with the most, your connection to the wrestling world, Mr. Ken Hill. Now, before we start off the show, ladies and gentlemen, I have a special treat for you all. I did promise over the week, at the beginning of the week, that I have a new shirt design to show off for the show. The Wrestling Connection. I hope you enjoy. So, courtesy of the fine people at customink.com. They do some great work. Now, on to business though. We jump into this week in review, and apropos that it comes on Friday the 13th. That a very unlucky week for one Mr. Daniel Bryan, the now former, spoiler alert, the now former WWE World Heavyweight Champion. As we sadly found out on Monday Night Raw. Mr. Bryan was sadly, it was the sad announcement that he could not compete at Money in the Bank, and Stephanie and Triple H, I know, with a very, very heavy heart, had to strip Daniel Bryan of the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Daniel Bryan's doctor coming on air to announce that despite Bryan's willingness to compete, he could not risk Bryan exacerbating the injury and making matters worse. With that announcement made, Stephanie made the next announcement that there would be a ladder match at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view to determine a new WWE World Heavyweight Championship. As you can see, we already had four men qualifying. Of course, the former WWE World Champion, Randy Orton, being inserted into the match by the Authority. Shocker, I know. Along with Alberto Del Rio, second to your left, the United States Champion Sheamus on your left, and the self-proclaimed, Paul Heyman proclaimed, King of Swing, Antonio Cesaro. Both Sheamus and Cesaro qualified through Money in the Bank qualifying matches. The first one with Sheamus going up against the Intercontinental Champion Wade Barrett in a champion versus champion match. Now, as you could expect between the Englishman and the Irish Brawler, this was a physical bout. Many big counters, boots, strikes, kicks. It was a knockout, drag-out fight, and it seemed like at moments that Barrett was closing in on a shot at the WWE World Championship at Money in the Bank. But Sheamus would rebound, nailing a bro kick to Barrett, coming in for a big boot of his own, to pick up the 3 count and a spot in the Money in the Bank match for the WWE World title. Cesaro would have his own challenges, going up against Mr. Monday Night himself, Rob Van Dam. Van Dam gave Cesaro quite a fight, dazzling the King of Swing with his vast array of kicks and aerial maneuvers, such as his split leg and moonsault. But RVD's playbook was no match for Heyman and the King of Swing Cesaro. Cesaro nailing his patented neutralizer pile driver to pick up the victory. Now, I think this poses a very interesting dichotomy for the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. You have the United States Champion, Sheamus. You have Orton, Del Rio, who's a very outside shot to win it because he hasn't been relevant in, say, the last 3 years. and Cesaro, which is interesting because you have to remember this guarantees a new WWE World Heavyweight Champion. This isn't just about a Money in the Bank match. This is determined a new world champion. So it opens up a plethora of possibilities. Moving on now, we come to a very emotional and very confrontational moment with the Shield and Seth Rollins. The Shield, the remnants of the Shield, Ambrose and Rollins, came out and essentially made a promise to Rollins that regardless of what explanation he had, regardless of the words that Triple H himself told Rollins to state, they were going to beat Rollins up. After he was done, everything he would have to say, Ambrose and Reigns were going to come out there and beat the bejesus out of him. That was pretty much going to be that was the bottom line. They made no bones about this. And this provided a rare opportunity to see a tried and true Dean Ambrose promo. Rollins would come out later. As you see here, Rollins, decked out in his nice black suit, explained that as the architect, if my producers would slow down on the images, Rollins would explain that as his role as the architect and the heart of the Shield, he had the ability not only to create the Shield, but destroy it. That where Ambrose and Reigns saw the three of them as brothers, Rollins only saw his friends as business partners. Very interesting choice of words. And that every time they said to believe in the Shield, Rollins really meant to believe in himself. Now, of course, once Rollins had his say, the Shield kept their promise. They had come out to ambush Seth, only to be ambushed themselves by the Wyatt family, who they'd been set to face earlier in a 6-man tag match. Now, the Shield would find themselves outmatched by the Wyatt family until John Cena, of all people, made the save, pretty much announcing himself as the Shield's third tag team partner in their big-time 6-man tag team match against the Wyatt family. With some help from John Cena, Ambrose and Reigns would come out on top, with Reigns nailing a spear on the Wyatt's Luke Harper for the victory. Not only sticking it to Triple H and Seth Rollins, but ultimately proving that the Shield was far from dead. Now, on a lighter note, we here at the Wrestling Connection wanted to send our deepest condolences to one Mr. Damien Sandow, who the WWE continues to humiliate on a weekly basis, as seen here. As seen here with Damien's version of interpretive dance. Here's the kicker for this one, ladies and gentlemen. The crowd has taken such pity on Damien Sandow that they've actually taken to cheering for him because he is put up with so much humiliation as Davy Crockett, as Sherlock Holmes, dressing up as Magneto, and now they have pretty much had him dress up in skin-tight tights and prancing around twirling a ribbon. Essentially proving that, you do anything to keep your job. You do anything to keep yourself from being featured, endeavored. If it means prancing around, twirling a ribbon, if it means on live television. Kudos to you, Mr. Sandow, and Godspeed. Now we come into this week's Ken's Den.
Time to step into Ken's Den.
Now, in Ken's Den this week, it's a little different. I'm keeping it within the realm of professional wrestling. No outside call-outs like last week. But this week, I'm calling out the Shield, but not necessarily just the Shield, but But since Seth Rollins' betrayal, since he turned his back on the Shield, the one big idea, the one big rumor running around is who's going to be the third member to replace Rollins in the Shield? Who's going to be the new third member and make it a trio again? Because, I mean, you wonder this, because Rollins himself was the heart and architect of the Shield. He was the center. He was what kept the lunacy, the lunatic fringe of Dean Ambrose at bay, and he was the direction. He was the direction for all of Roman Reigns' pent up anger and rage. He was the focus for that. And you wonder, oh, they don't have any chance without him. They're going to fall apart in a couple of weeks, and they're going to go their separate ways. We don't know this. I mean, you have so many names floating around to replace Seth Rollins. You have the erstwhile CM Punk. You have who we haven't seen in a couple of years, the Prince of the Palace of Wisdom, John Morrison, the Prince of Parkour. I mean, you even have some upstarts from WWE's developmental program, NXT. You have the NXT champion, Adrian Neville. You have the former El Generico from Ring of Honor, now known as Sami Zayn. You have all these names being thrown around, and there haven't been a lot of people who have entertained the notion that maybe Ambrose and Reigns don't need a third member. And the problem is, when Ambrose, Reigns, and Rollins first united and came up to WWE, they were united front. It wasn't like past factions. It wasn't all about individuals. It was about unity. It was about justice. It was about brotherhood. It wasn't about three people. It was about one unit. Bringing justice and destruction and kicking as much butt as possible in the WWE. That's what their focus was. And the problem is, sure, it would be exciting. Sure, you could have a high flyer like Adrian Neville or John Morrison. You could have a daredevil like Sami Zayn in there to fill the same high-flying, high adrenaline role that Seth Rollins played. But the problem is, they wouldn't have the same views. They wouldn't have the same mindset. It would essentially be the proverbial square peg in a round hole. It would seem like a good idea. It seemed like a unique idea. It wouldn't work in the long run, because it would just seem like it would be a poor man's version of the Shield, regardless. And that's not taking anything away from the talents of John Morrison or Sami Zayn or Adrian Neville. That's not taking anything away from them. The problem is, when you think of the Shield, you think of Rollins, Reigns, and Ambrose. Adding anyone else to it is just like, it just can't be done. It wouldn't work in the long run. It would be good for like a couple of weeks. It'd be nice to have maybe a guest member of the Shield on, but to bring someone on a more permanent role to replace Rollins, I don't see it happening. Now, speaking of Mr. Seth Rollins, he is our focus this week. And in today's Superstar Profile. Now, although Seth Rollins has made a name for himself in the last 2 years as a member of the Shield, we have to go way back to his start when he first started professional wrestling in 2003, moving up through the independents, through Noah, through independent promotions such as Noah, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, and finally making his mark in what is known as Ring of Honor Wrestling, or ROH. From 2007 to 2010, Seth Rollins, or as he was known down in ROH, Tyler Black, made his name as not only as a high-flying daredevil type, but also as a great tag team wrestler, teaming up with Jimmy Jacobs to form a very daring tag team known as Age of the Fall. Two-time Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions. But around 2009, Tyler Black, Seth Rollins, broke off from the Age of the Fall to pursue the Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Championship, eventually winning it off of then-champion Austin Aries in early 2010. It was at this point that Tyler Black, I'll just go with Seth Rollins at this point, Seth Rollins had been contacted by WWE for its developmental program. And when the Ring of Honor fans found out, they were less than pleased. Rollins took this opportunity to sign his WWE contract in the middle of a Ring of Honor ring, severing his ties with Ring of Honor and moving on to WWE. He would find quick success in WWE as Seth Rollins in 2010-2011 in the NXT developmental program, quickly becoming the NXT World Heavyweight Champion and holding the NXT Championship for well over a year. Near the end of his title reign, he would align himself with Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose to form what would become one of the more vaunted tag teams and factions in WWE known as the Shield, making their way up to make their debut at Survivor Series in 2012 and running roughshod for over 2 years. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we will now show one of Seth Rollins' signature maneuvers known as the Curb Stomp. Now, how the Curb Stomp goes, it's a very simple, very time-tested maneuver. Essentially, what Seth Rollins and others like to do is they often like to have their opponents in a crouching or kneeled position with their head facing down. Then Rollins will get a running start and essentially stomp his opponent's head into the mat. It's simple. I'm looking at the essentially stomping his opponent's head into the mat and leaving him with a very splitting headache. Now, the curb stomp is a more time-tested maneuver for more agile wrestlers who like to get a quick strike in. It's much like the super kick. It can come out of nowhere, and it's good for disorienting or finishing off a bigger opponent, because obviously no one likes being stomped right on top of their head. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show. That is our show for this week. If you'd like to talk more about wrestling, you can look us up on our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/The Wrestling Connection. You can contact me on my Twitter at WWConnection. And if you have any questions about any of our segments or superstars that we talked about, or just wrestling in general, you can email me at thewrestlingconnection@gmail.com. I am actually going to be holding auditions for a new co-host. So if you have a passion for professional wrestling, if you were interested in applying, and of course if you're looking for some TV credentials, just like I said, contact me at wrestlingconnection@gmail.com. Just let me know how long you've been a wrestling fan, who's your favorite wrestler, what sort of experience you have doing TV or writing or video, and I'll get back to you and I'll let you know. Now, in the meantime, I wish you all a happy Friday the 13th, and be connected, get connected, and stay connected.
Looking deep into the universe is like taking a trip down memory lane. The farther from Earth we look, the farther back in time we see. The farther back in time we see.